So last year I did a full-blown review of these, and these would be the Viture Pro XR glasses. And I'll go ahead and throw a link up here if you want an especially deep dive into what these are, but in a nutshell what they are glasses that basically simulate a 135-inch screen right in front of your face, and it does this through two really densely packed micro LED panels that are in each eye. And thanks to their USB-C connection, it makes them pretty ideally suited to connecting to either a laptop so you can extend your screen real estate, a mobile device like a phone or tablet if you just want to watch movies like on a giant screen right in front of you, or for our purposes today, enjoying the Switch 2 in an entirely new way. Also, I should point out, you don't have to use these crazy shades, they just block out the light entirely for these glasses. You can use them in a transparent way, I just thought I'd be silly for the video. But anyways, when the Viture people sent me these glasses last year to test them out, originally I only tested them with the Steam Deck, and that's for a couple of reasons. I'm sure that's fine. Anyways, I only tested it with the Steam Deck initially, and that's because at the time I'd done something in the neighborhood of like 150 or 200 videos just on the Steam Deck and the Steam ecosystem. But the other reason was, because of the Steam Deck's versatility, you can just plug these directly into the USB-C port on the Steam Deck to start experiencing the visuals for those games and play them in just an incredibly cool way. However, to get these glasses to work with the Switch or the Switch 2, you needed an additional accessory because they couldn't natively just do video out through the USB-C port like you can do with the Steam Deck. And that's where the Viture Pro mobile dock comes in. Now last year when they initially sent me that first package with the glasses to test out, they sent the dock separately in a package later on, and by the time I'd wrapped up that review, I really just didn't have the bandwidth to give the dock itself proper coverage. But the other day when I was on Twitter, I saw that they did a firmware update for the Pro mobile dock that did make it compatible with the Switch 2. And as soon as I saw that, I remembered, yeah, I definitely still have the Pro mobile dock sitting around, so I decided I would go ahead and pop it open and test it with the Switch 2. So that's what today's video is all about, is what the Viture Pro mobile dock is and the features that it has, what it takes to get it set up to work with the Switch 2, and then finally what the experience is like actually using it and battle testing it with some of the beefier titles on the Switch 2. And in a bizarre twist of fate, after I'd started working on this project and seeing that they had a firmware update for the Pro mobile dock, they actually reached out to me again, and while I can't reveal anything yet, all I can say is they definitely have some exciting plans in motion. But for now, let's go ahead and talk about what this thing is and what it provides if you're somebody who's either in the market for a pair of those Pro XR glasses, or if you already have a pair and you just want to get it working with your Switch 2. So in a nutshell, the Pro mobile dock serves as both a power bank and a mobile dock of sorts that you can hook up to the Switch 1 or Switch 2, again depending on whether your firmware's up to date. It has a handsome gloss black finish around the edge of the device, and then the top and bottom are kind of a matte rubbery kind of finish, almost like the Switch 2 Joy-Cons themselves. And on the top they even provided 4 stylish LEDs that kind of give you an indication of how much power you have left in the dock when you're using it. The whole thing's really weighty and it has a nice premium feel, and I believe it sports a 13,000 mAh battery inside. The middle USB-C port is flanked by red and blue indicators matching the Nintendo Switch, so you know exactly which port to use whenever you want to connect the USB-C port from the Switch 2 to the dock itself to make sure the video signal gets there. But it also has a standard HDMI port if you wanted to hook up another device entirely, like a PS5 or something if you were on the go, or maybe playing it in the car with a power inverter or something like that, so there's definitely some versatility here. And then it also has 2 USB-C ports for output to 2 sets of glasses if you'd like, which would probably make it great if you're playing a couch co-op game with a buddy or something on like a long flight or a car ride or something like that, where you needed 2 people to look at the same screen simultaneously. And then it has a power button up top, which you can press and hold to check the battery level when the device isn't in use. Honestly, it's all pretty self-explanatory, but the included documentation covers the full range of its capabilities and is pretty easy to follow. But before you can use the Pro mobile dock with your Switch 2, you will have to make sure the firmware is updated, and I've dropped a link in the description where you can jump straight to their page to make sure that you can plug it in, check the firmware update, and ultimately update it if you're not where you need to be to use it with the Switch 2. So let's go ahead and take a look at that experience real quick because there are a couple of caveats. So before you hit the link, you'll want to make sure that you're using Chrome version 98 or higher, I think is what they said on the website, to make sure that you get the best experience. Also, when you first land on that page, it's going to prompt you and say, hey, make sure the computer that you're using is connected to a power supply. Probably they're assuming that you're using a laptop or something like that. But yeah, you definitely don't want the power dying to your computer while you're in the middle of updating the firmware on the Pro mobile dock. Also, to make the connection to your computer to update the firmware, they prompt you to use the original USB-C cable that was included with the Pro mobile dock, or if you don't have it, or if it's just not, feasibly long enough to reach the device that you're trying to connect it to, then just make sure you're using a Thunderbolt 3 equipped USB-C cable. And finally, you can't just plug it into any USB-C port on the computer that you're trying to use to update this device. They explicitly say that you have to use one that supports DisplayPort over USB-C, which was something I did not read very carefully, and at first I tried plugging this into the front of my Mac Studio on those USB-C ports which did not support this functionality, so yeah, make sure you pay attention to the instructions. Once you have everything securely connected, it's pretty straightforward to get the process set up. There's a connect button so it can connect and actually read the firmware and see what it's at currently, and then after you have an idea of what it's set to, then you can go and click the update button underneath to start the process. And I would say that it went pretty smoothly for me. After it completed installing the firmware, it did prompt me once to unplug and plug it back in to reconnect it, and I did have some finicky behavior getting it to detect it after the firmware update was done, but I think that might have had something to do with my browser security settings or something like that, because after I unplugged it and plugged it back in, there was no issue whatsoever. Honestly, the whole process of getting the firmware updated only takes a couple of minutes, and again, it is pretty straightforward as long as you follow the instructions on the link. And after I got through that process, after finally following the instructions, it was time for the moment of truth. I went ahead and connected the Switch 2 to the mobile dock, and then connected the Pro XR glasses to that dock, and I'm happy to report that I had no issues at all getting a video signal out of the Switch 2 and into those glasses, again, via the Pro mobile dock. So I immediately started navigating through the Switch 2 and firing up games and really just having a good old time remembering what the quality looks like, because I had not used these in a minute, not since I was doing a ton of testing on the Steam Deck, and I think once or twice when I was taking flights somewhere. And once I got rolling with it, it looked gorgeous when I used it with the Steam Deck, and absolutely nothing is lost in translation when using it with the Switch 2. Those micro OLED panels are as sharp as ever, with rich colors and super responsive thanks to the 120Hz refresh rate. The only time I had an issue when using these with the Switch 2 was when I accidentally jostled the cable connection to the Switch 2, which resulted in like a horizontal line kind of splitting the screen for a second and freezing everything up, but after I just unplugged it and plugged it back in, it went right back to performing normally, and I didn't see that issue again. So I guess really the only problem that I've had so far is my own clumsiness. But even though everything appeared to be going well that first 5 to 10 minutes that I was testing it, I was still a little bit skeptical. And the reason I say that is because we just haven't seen a lot of third-party docks for the Nintendo Switch 2 yet that aren't the OEM dock. I think GameStop might have one GameStop branded one that they have out that's an alternative, but I'm pretty sure that's the only one that I've seen, so I was curious how this would perform over a long play session like you might have on, an extended flight or something like that, and to make sure that it would actually maintain that video connection without any issues, that it wouldn't overheat or run into any other weird problem that maybe hasn't been documented yet, because I don't think a lot of people are testing the Switch 2 with this just yet. And then secondarily, if it was stable, then I wanted to know just how long this thing would last if I really pushed the system using that 13,000 milliamp battery that's inside. So I decided I would fire up the most taxing game that the Switch 2 has at the moment, which would be Cyberpunk 2077, and I just went to town on this using the glasses with the Pro Mobile Dock, and I'm happy to report that it lasted for just under 2 hours at 1 hour and 56 minutes. Which, honestly, is pretty great, and considering when this thing finally ran out that the Switch 2 still had its own battery to rely on, and given the fact that the glasses are kind of a nice-to-have, not necessarily a need-to-have when it comes to a mobile device like this, since you could just use the screen, and the Switch 2's screen is pretty great, that meant I still had a couple of hours of playtime to go, so yeah, it can pretty significantly extend your playtime, and I'm guessing that if you were playing a game that didn't tax the Switch 2's hardware so significantly, that you could probably get over 3 extra hours of playtime using something like this rather than just 2. Plus, it is pretty great that when it finally runs out of juice and you do have to put the glasses away, you can still continue to play on the Switch 2 screen for another couple of hours, even with something as demanding as Cyberpunk. So yeah, I'd hardly call this a comprehensive battery test, but with Cyberpunk 2077 being one of the most power-hungry launch games of the Switch 2 lineup, I'm pretty thrilled with the performance so far, and I'm definitely excited to spend more time with it in exactly this way. My only real complaint with the experience of playing it for a couple of hours this way is that when you have the Switch 2 connected to the Pro Mobile Dock underneath of it, the only thing really keeping them together is the USB-C connection itself, and it was kind of moving around and making me a little bit nervous since this is new hardware. However, if you go to Viture's site, they actually do have accessories for this called the Pro Mobile Dock mount that would actually snap this onto the original Switch's body. The only thing is, I don't think they have one for the Switch 2 yet. I would assume they're probably going to be making one. I just don't have any official confirmation on that yet, so I'll probably have to email them and ask about it. Overall, I would say if you're somebody who travels a lot with your Switch 2, or you're just somebody who really likes the idea of like a really uniquely immersive way to experience everything with something like those XR glasses, this is a pretty slick accessory. Granted, it is pricey at $129, but honestly, just a backup battery on its own can often cost $100 to $150, and it doesn't give you the ability to hook up multiple devices and output to a set of glasses. Now, granted, the glasses themselves are also a very expensive niche accessory, since the MSRP is about $499, but if you do check back on Amazon regularly, you'll find that they they often do put these units on sale both individually and often as bundle deals where you can get both the Pro mobile dock and the glasses for like $4.99 or $5.99. So yeah, it's definitely worth checking back periodically, and so far my experience with these glasses and now the dock to use them with the Switch 2 has continued to be pretty great. Now I will go ahead and drop affiliate links down below if you want to buy any of these components individually, like just the dock or the glasses or something like that, but definitely keep an eye out for the bundle as well. I've seen that thing go as low as $517, and that includes, the glasses, the mobile dock, and I think an 8-bit Do controller to boot, which is a really solid deal. However, like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, you may want to hold off on purchasing anything just yet. I am categorically not allowed to say anything. All I can say is that Viture is definitely committed to making moves in this space, and they definitely have some exciting things in the work that, again, I'm just not able to talk about. But if you could hold off for just a little bit longer, that would probably be the best thing to do. And believe me, I would absolutely love to tell you more, but for all I know, they have a legal squad of ninjas just like Nintendo does, so yeah, I'm keeping my mouth shut for the moment. But just saying, great product so far, nothing's changed in that arena having moved to the Switch 2, but yeah, something to keep in mind that they are definitely not done yet. Also, if you have any questions about this or anything I didn't really cover here, or just something you're curious about before you jump in on a purchase, because I know this is a pretty pricey accessory, let me know in the comments below and I'll do my best to answer them, or I'll just go badger the Viture folks, see if they can give me an answer. But yeah, that's going to be it for this one. As far as what's coming up on the channel, I do finally have a full review of the Switch 2 en route now that I've spent a few weeks with it, and then I'm also hard at work on a tips and tricks video for the Switch 2, so you can really get the most out of your system, or just do some common troubleshooting if you run into issues. But that's going to be it for this one. As always, thank you so much for your time and hanging out with me here on the channel. I really appreciate it. Have an amazing day, and I will see you on the next one. Bye.